Hello and welcome to Hype versus Honesty, the new digital PR frontier that we have done for Hub and Leeds Digital Festival 2025. We're about to run you through Scream if you want to go faster, getting noisy with digital PR. Let's jump straight in. Average attention span online, any guesses? This obviously works better in a room full of people when we present it. It's 8 seconds. It's less than the memory of a goldfish. Things you can't do in 8 seconds. It takes 3 to 5 minutes to make a decent cup of tea. It takes a couple of minutes to make your bed. It takes longer to reply okay to a WhatsApp message. In 2000, our average attention span was 12 seconds. That means that it's deteriorating at a really alarming rate. This is why DPR is important. So this is Scream if you want to go faster. I'm Matt Jones. I'm head of digital PR here at Hub. I've worked in the industry for over 10 years. Loads of huge clients, some smaller clients, really good campaign work that we've done over the years. And I'm from a digital PR background. I'm going to introduce the fantastic Jade.
Yeah, I'm Jade. I'm DPR executive. That always sounds so much fancier than it should be here at Hub. I have a bit more of a traditional PR background. I've worked with a lot of B2B clients and in a lot more B2B sectors such as manufacturing, construction. So the slightly more boring stuff to a lot of people, but I still enjoy it.
Cracking. So this is Scream if you want to go faster. We live in an attention economy. Everybody is constantly trying to get our attention, whether it's kind of smartphones, whether it's the news, it can be anything. We live in a real attention economy now. There's competition, and competition is absolutely everywhere. It can be journalists' inboxes, it can be other clients, it can be direct client competitors, it can be other agencies in-house. There is a lot of digital PR agencies across the UK. It can be similar campaigns going live. Everyone's got a story of we've worked really hard getting this campaign, bringing it to life, and then 2 days before it's meant to go to press, someone else has just done it. Getting stories past news editors, not only getting it past journalists, but editors too. Breaking news stories, and even competing with kind of past campaigns, so things that have gone live and actually that they've done the data already. So you might be competing with that too. In terms of breaking news stories, I'm just going to quickly pass over to Jade to give a little bit of an example of when this happened to her.
Yeah, I mean, I use one example of this, which is I'd been working on a campaign for a big European international client. It was a big health report they did. And then when we'd had everything lined up, we knew the day we were going to go out. The general election was called. Specifically, it was called to be on the day that we were going to go out with our report. So it just threw the entire news cycle into chaos. I mean, some positives that we could use things from the election and kind of back up the points the health report was making, but it also meant there was no point our report trying to compete with that. So we had to go petition all of these different agencies across Europe and kind of get everything moved, which, you know, it's not expected, but it's something we always have to be prepared for in PR.
Cool. So we live in the news, especially in the world of PR. We are constantly in the news, and it often feels like this at the moment. Kind of fun isn't necessarily aligned with the news necessarily. It can often feel like the world is just burning in front of our very eyes, and we have to kind of sit there with a kind of smile on our face and think, this is fine, it'll be over soon, we can cut through the noise. The issue with that is we want to be remembered, and we naturally don't want any clients, or if you're in-house, you don't want to be getting yourself into the press for the wrong reasons. It is really, really important. It's a delicate relationship between PRs and journalists. It's really important that you're doing the right thing as well. So first, again, another question that was asked in the room, but I will ask again here. What colour is the sun? I'll give you a second to think about that. Most people would say, yeah, yellow, orange. And the reason for that is because since you're a small child, or if I asked anybody to draw the sun, they would likely jump for kind of a red, yellow, quite I'm not in art, as you can probably tell, but realistically, a lot of children would, and it's kind of one of those conceptions you kind of just assume as you get older. Oh yeah, the sun's yellow, like it's one of those things. But the sun isn't yellow; it's white. It's made up of all these different colours, and I guess to our naked eye, it would look white. I'm not going to read this out for obvious reasons, but you can pause it and have a look if you really want it. It is quite interesting, and you probably sat here thinking, I've come to a webinar on kind of cutting through the noise in digital PR. Why the hell is this man talking to me about the sun? Well, here's another quick question for you, which is, where do you store your tomato sauce? This is kind of one of those really widely debated. Everyone's got an opinion on it. Does it go in the fridge? Does it go in the cupboard? It's arguable, but it's a common thing, and it's also been covered in the press. And this is just a really quick example of just tweaking something. So if I was to ask you the same question around soy sauce, I imagine 99.9% of you would argue that goes in the cupboard. Again, when we went through this live, the general consensus in the room was, yeah, soy sauce does not go in the fridge. However, if you think of that little hook and you start thinking, well, actually, that's a really good, quick question, quick piece of PR, and you can get out. It's hyper relevant to kind of one of the brands we were working on at the time. Yeah, it says you meant to store it in the fridge. No one's going to, but it's a really good angle and a good twist on like a common story. My point being, when someone challenges a common belief, it creates conversation, and that is what we're trying to do. So ultimately, we create conversation. That is what digital PR is all about. It used to be just chasing links for the sake of chasing links. It is not that sort of world anymore. Yes, you need brand mentions. Yes, you need links. Yes, you need to kind of be impressed, but you need to do it in the right way, and you need to create conversation. It doesn't necessarily matter if you agree or disagree, as long as you're kind of sensitive to your client's needs and their kind of reputation, the character that you want to go out to press. It doesn't necessarily matter if you agree or disagree. Journalists, by their very nature, are judged on their own metrics. Anything that can get engagement or comments and things like that is always going to help. So it doesn't necessarily matter if you agree or disagree. We need to provoke a reaction. That is the whole point of what we are doing. So what's our current challenge then in digital PR in 2025 and soon to be 2026? We need to stand out, but how do we do that? I'm just going to talk you through an example here of Anna, and I'm going to caveat this quite heavily with, I know some of the people that worked on this campaign, I don't believe for 1 second it was ill-intentioned, but it just shows the danger of when you have a brand, you press send on an email and it goes to a journalist, the story is no longer yours, it belongs to the press. Some people may have seen this story, some people may not have. The reason this was done, obviously, there's been similar success from kind of previous campaigns. So obviously it felt like something that may have worked. I believe the kind of issues in this kind of stemmed from all sorts of different things, and it maybe wasn't as considered as it could have been. So that's not how you want to cut through the noise, because this is what happens. Journalists can write whatever they want, that is their prerogative, and if you are kind of giving them ammunition, you have to make sure that you're kind of protecting yourself as a brand too. So when we talk about cutting through the noise, you've got to be able to do it in the right way. So how do we stand out in the right way? Recycling campaigns isn't safe. We've covered this already. There are certain stuff you can do, regional indexes, things like that, but creative campaigns still work. You've just got to be really, really clever with them and kind of ideally have data to back it up and make it interesting. Even off-site stunts and things like that. I'm a big advocate for off-site generating on-site content. You have to take risks. That's really, really important. I'm going to show you some examples now. Big, brave ideas can still win. We know this, we do it, we see videos, pictures, imagery, and all that kind of stuff. We know big, brave ideas can still win. And brand is more important than ever, but brands must be brave. I'm going to talk you through these examples now. So the best brands break the rules. This is Aldi versus M&S. Everyone will have seen this at this point. It is a really, really well covered campaign. Obviously, Aldi's social media team are top of their game, no doubt about that. But this is a great example of kind of leaning into something when a lawyer somewhere been like, no, you can't do that. Aldi have just really built character. They were like, no, it's fine, we'll ignore that. They're breaking the rules. They're breaking the rules. But this works because it was Aldi and M&S. If it was kind of John's Pie Shop and Dave's Pie Shop and they had a little argument, I mean, arguably that could have been interesting. But the fact these were huge brands doing this made it a hell of a lot more of an enticing story, not only for press but consumers, and like it's got that talkability. It passes the pub test. Duolingo, the owl died, similar to if they killed off Ronald McDonald. Like it's got to be someone who's got almost iconic status. It can't just be kind of your local mascot that nobody's ever heard of, because it just does not have the same gravitas. It has to be something big, and it has to be a big, brave idea to win. Thankfully, he's been resurrected now. Heinz doing the tomato ketchup smoothie. I quite like this idea. Tomatoes are fruit. I get it. But again, it was Heinz doing it. Arguably, you might get some pickup from a tomato ketchup smoothie if a local calf was doing it, but probably not as much as Heinz would by owning it. And then IKEA and Roblox, again, maybe not as well known as some of the other campaigns I've just shown you, but kind of interviewing people and really kind of modernizing and making it cool and engaging and all that kind of stuff, and interviewing through Roblox. Again, it's kind of a twee subject, but it also kind of worked. It generated press. It did what it was meant to do and protected the brand, but it was still a big, brave idea to do. So you can do these big, brave ideas. You can think about them and you can kind of say, yep, I've got this wild idea. You can put all the time in the world, the ideation, the brainstorming and all that kind of stuff. But it is really hard out of there to cut through the noise. Reach only recently have cut their editorial headcount. One of the biggest kind of reorganization in structure, the editorial teams as well. Obviously, being a journalist and PRs, I know there is a bit of a fractured relationship sometimes, but nobody obviously wants to see anything like this. And PRs would be nothing without journalists. Just like journalists would be nothing without PRs, like it goes both ways. We need each other to survive. It is more competitive than ever. Spam won't cut through anymore. It's got to be something that kind of is going to cut through the noise. My point being, you've put all this work into ideation, creating campaign. Maybe it's visuals, maybe it's video, maybe it's kind of offsite, maybe it's a PR stunt, whatever it is. But you've got to think about the first thing a journalist sees. And I have worked in this industry for a long time, and I often think it's the last thing that PRs think about. They'll put all this work into a campaign. The first thing a journalist sees is a subject line. You should be thinking of this at the same time as your ideation, as your creation. You need to basically wow them over quickly. Don't spam them. Don't put silly subject lines in that have nothing to do. Don't clickbait. Don't wind them up. There is an art in this, and I could do a full presentation on subject lines themselves. But you've got to be careful. But just remember, like, don't do your campaign, write your outreach, and then better at the last minute, like, oh, I need to put a subject line in, because you can do something better than that. There is also a very, very thin line, arguably not even a line at this point, between PR and DPR. Aside from links, which I think traditionally DPR has been kind of judged on, PR and DPR are very similar disciplines. You have people working in digital PR who move into PR, and PR moving into digital PR, and what you find is that they're very similar disciplines indeed. And this is where I'm going to pass over to Jade, who is from more of a traditional PR background too.
Yeah, so as mentioned earlier, I've jumped forward a bit too far. I come from kind of less jazzy, more traditional PR background. I've worked with a lot of kind of house builders, hygiene companies, producing content that to the general public isn't as interesting as some of the more commercial brands. I personally love looking on like the planning portal for house builders, but I understand that the general public, don't spend their free time doing that. But the thing with digital PR and traditional PR is we can take some more digital tools to make the more traditional PR stories a bit more interesting. It's just all about hitting the campaign sweet spot. So this is where the goals of your client, the interests of the journalist, and the needs of the audience, the readers, the general public, this is where they overlap. If you're missing one of these, oh, my nice Venn diagram, I nearly forgot about it. This is the client sweet spot. But if you're missing one of these areas, whether it's client, journalist, audience, then your story just might fail because it might not resonate. Our job as PRs is to find the balance between all of these. Sometimes a client might come to us with a story that they think is great, but we can't find the legs in it. We can't find a journalist that wants to write about it, or we just don't think there's an audience out there big enough that'll care about it. So getting noisy doesn't necessarily mean doing the big stunts and publicising everything in a crazy way. Matt just spoke about these big noisy ideas and breaking the rules that matters, breaking the rules can matter, but that doesn't really work unless there's substance behind it. It just becomes static. So we've all seen these big splashy campaigns. It's a bit of a cliche to float something down the Thames. I'm sure everyone has seen this big rubber duck going down the Thames, but no one really knows what this is for or what it was publicising. So did it really work? Because it didn't have any substance behind it. Another example of this is the kind of fake job headline. So these come about every now and then. I've seen some this week even. And yeah, sure, it's a great way to get a headline. You might get some links even, but if it's not saying anything genuine about the company, then it's not really doing anything effective and long lasting. The public can see through something that's just a plain and simple PR campaign more than ever now. We're also overexposed. We're also chronically online. We won't talk about how messed up the news schedule is at the moment, but people are becoming a bit more aware so that they can see things like the fake job headline and they know that that's just some basic PR for a company. One example of this is Pretty Little Things' recent rebrand. It looks great on paper. The graphics that they've done behind it are lovely, and yeah, it fits into a new aesthetic, but it got absolutely torn apart online because it wasn't actually resonating with what their brand is. They didn't change anything significant. They just kind of stuck some new colours on it and were done with it. The same with this story, you know, sending Katy Perry to space. It was absolutely everywhere. It was every headline. It was every meme. It was my pub quiz team name. I even won an extra point for it. But apart from that, it didn't really do anything. We asked this in the room on the day if anyone knows what company this was for, and no one knew, despite the fact it said right there on the picture it's for Blue Origin. And this was the Google trends for Blue Origin. As you can see, yes, it peaked right as it was happening, but it hasn't made any lasting impact at all. So really, what was the point of it? The real stuff is more important than ever now. In the midst of this crazy online culture, which I feel like we always get so bogged down in saying how crazy the news is, but it's more important to give your audience something real and tangible. Yes, we can dress it up and we can make it fun and splashy, but there needs to be some real substance behind it. And this is where digital PR really comes in, because we've got the tools to make it really interesting. The tools start by, I always say my biggest piece of advice in PR is just to be nosy. Your client has all the information they need. They've got all the data. They've got all the unique stats that no one else has. They've got industry information that as PRs we can Google, we can research the company, the sector as much as we want. But sometimes there's things that wouldn't even occur to us to search. And they've got all this insider information. And it's about taking all of that and kind of twisting it, seeing how we can go against the grain to make it something interesting, looking at common misconceptions that people wouldn't have thought of, or that we can take and twist in a different way. And even just basic business information, we can really be a minefield to our clients. There's something that they might think is so basic and so obvious. By being nosy and kind of dragging that out of them, it might be something really interesting that the general public will talk about. Fundamentally, it's just always about the quality of the story. And if you can back it up with your clients' in-house data and just what they have to hand, then it's always going to be a solid story. It can't get torn apart. It can't get shredded online because people think it's made up. You can also put together your own desk research, which Matt's going to talk about a little more.
Yeah, so I think like a lot of people get bogged down in the idea of using surveys, and not that they don't serve a purpose, but I always said this: stories, not stats. Stats are great to an extent; they can be a really good linkable asset, but that's not interesting to press unless it's got a narrative. That said, you can go and do all this desk research yourself and still pull a story. This is just an example of something we did about accessible cities for one of our clients. But you have to ensure that you've got a robust methodology that you can back up. That is the one thing that I think early on in my career I learned. If you're going to do this desk research, you can't just kind of make stuff up. You have to have a robust methodology behind it. Again, it can be a linkable asset in itself, but the whole point of it is that, yeah, you have a methodology and you can prove how you've got to that data. Yeah, it sometimes may not be wholly accurate, but I think any journalist worth their salt who can say, well, they worked it out by doing this, this, and this, rather than us just saying, oh, well, Leeds is the best city in the UK. Well, based on what? It's about having that methodology and saying, well, actually, it's the best for X because of Y. Data becomes a linkable asset. Unique research can be linked to organically as well, so it stands the test of time. That's a good benefit as well, especially if you can have something that, I hate the phrase evergreen because I think it gets bandied about and isn't necessarily always relevant, because even evergreen pieces often need updating, but unique research can be linked to organically. So
yeah, once you've nagged your client for all that information, which then as well, a little bonus is that you've got a perfect package for a journalist. As Matt mentioned earlier, Reach PLC journalism is in a real weird state at the moment in the UK. So journalists don't have a lot of time to make a story and research it. If we've sent it all to them, then, you know, we're doing their job for them essentially. But once we've done all that, we have to ask ourselves a very important question. And that is, so what? We can have all this information, it can be great, but then we have to really look at it. We have to think, who cares? So what? Then again, one more time, so what? And once more with real feeling, so what? It's just about being really honest with yourself and your client. That is such a big thing, of picking apart the story, thinking what would a journalist look at and pull apart and ask, so what? Why should they spend their time covering it, basically? Why will their readers care about it? It forces you to really go back to the core PR principles and think, why is this a story that should be in print? And I've got a little, oh, this is what I just said, who will care about it? What does it offer the audience? What does it say about the client? And why should a journalist bother covering this? You really need to pull apart everything that you've got and everything that you've packaged up and just think about how it applies to each of these. A really good idea that came from this is this app, Tudder. So Tudder was made by a livestock company, which, I mean, before researching this, I never considered that there was a livestock company that sold livestock, and the general public also isn't aware of it. So this company took all the information that they already had, which is just about cows, and kind of reformatted it. They linked their website into a dating app that they made. So it had loads of really fun visuals. It was a funny little story, but it was actually useful to their customers. And it was great for the press because it was funny. It had some good puns, which actually disregard everything else we've said. As long as a journalist has got a good pun, they're going to be happy. Some of them are a bit dodgy. I don't know why they've used sheepish farm animals when it's about cows, but hey, who am I to say anything? This is some of the great, but also kind of a lot imagery, but it went down really well with press. And yeah, when you ask so what, as well as it being a really fun story that a journalist knows they're going to get clicks on, they know that it actually is relevant for the right audience and for their trade audience. And they also know that it's working for the client, it's getting out there what the client wants to talk about. So yeah, it actually showcases the client's platform. But it also shows that they're creative, that they know how to be relevant, and that they're solution oriented. For the journalist, yes, it's funny, but they can get in like farming UK titles. And for the audience, it's actually relevant to their audience, but also the general public will find it funny. So all of that together means you've just got a happy cow client. And hopefully they find a nice date out of it, the cows, that is. So yeah, it did really successfully, which we shouldn't know the name of a livestock company as the general public, but it got covered in The Guardian, it got covered in the BBC, it did really well, it got covered in trade press. Some of these headlines are a bit dodgy, the poor cows, but it was very successful. And finally, when we've done all that, we've put together a campaign like Tudor, which isn't ours, sadly can't take credit for it as much as I would like to. We have to look back and judge ourselves. The wise words of RuPaul, if you can't judge yourself, how can you judge somebody else? You have to look back at the campaigns, you have to see which parts were relevant, which parts worked, which parts resonated with the journalists, which part resonated with the audience. And if you actually got your client's message out there, sometimes it's so easy to forget about the client and all of this, because as PRs, we want to really impress the journalist and we want to see a fun headline, but we also have to consider that the headline is saying what the client wants to say. And once you've got that, you've got a 10 out of 10 campaign.
So I guess just to kind of wrap this up quickly, when I talk about subject lines, and if you remember right at the start, I asked about the average attention span. You've got 8 seconds to win, so it doesn't matter how much time you put into your ideation, creation, visuals, etc., etc. You can craft the perfect outreach emails. If your subject line is wrong, then you're already in trouble. Getting noisy doesn't necessarily mean fluff or stunts. Yes, surely they still have their place, but sometimes getting noisy actually just means doing the right thing at the right time in a really creative way. Make your subject line stand out, but don't clickbait, don't wind up journalists. They are stressed enough as it is. As Jade just alluded to there, make sure you're answering the so what. You can have the best campaign idea in the world, but if someone could sit in a room like, so what, it doesn't pass the pub test, it doesn't matter. You've got to be able to answer that. So what, how is it relevant to our client? A quick tip is the who, what, where, when, why, and how. If you ever put an idea in a brainstorm or anything like that, and you can answer those 6 questions, your idea is fairly bulletproof at that point. Hit that sweet spot, client, audience, journalist, all really important. And then this last point, which I do want to kind of hit home because it is really important, especially at the moment. The news by its very nature is miserable. Nobody puts on the 10 o'clock news and thinks, oh, this will be a laugh. It's informative. It is meant to know kind of what's going on in the world. But especially if you work in PR at the moment, make sure you're still looking after yourself because that's really, really important. As much as that this is fine meme that was earlier in the deck, it is still really important to do. So if you do have any questions, and I hope some of that was useful to some of you, please do get in touch with us. We're at Hub. You will be able to kind of add us all on LinkedIn. As I said, I'm Matt Jones, head of digital PR here. If you've got any questions or kind of anything you want to kind of know, yeah, please do drop us a message. And I'm going to let Jade quickly sign it. Oh, I'm just going to caveat. You might be wondering why Mark Wiggins is in here, but there's also a separate talk as well that me and Mark did that is very well worth a watch too.
I didn't even question that.
But yeah, sorry, I will pass on to Jade to say goodbye.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who else is still here because we might have lost them all in the first 8 seconds. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, just drop me a message on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you ever so much for your time and watching. I'm going to try and turn this recording off now. Take care of yourself.